Hi, I'm Vanessa Vicaria, aka The Math Guru, and you're listening to Math Therapy, a podcast that helps guests work through their math traumas one problem at a time. Whether you think you're a math person or not, you're about to find out that math people don't actually exist. But the scars that math class left on many of us definitely do. And don't worry, no calculators or actual math were involved in the making of this podcast. Guys, I seriously can't believe I'm saying this, but here we are, the last episode of the season. Like, how did that even happen? Seriously, guys, thank you so much for giving Math Therapy a shot and for listening to the first season ever. So many more exciting things to come, but for now, it's time to introduce you to our last guest, and this is definitely a last but not least situation because he is a wild one. Johnny Cassels, aka JC, owns Cassels Tutoring, a tutoring space right near us in Midtown Toronto. He uses a really cool approach, just like us, to work with his pupils to ensure that both fulfillment and accountability are at the forefront of the process, which I love because that is something that schools do not focus on, and in my opinion, something that kids are totally lacking, which we will definitely dig into in this episode. Also, guys, JC was basically a pro hockey player at the junior A level and still coaches today. And ever since I met JC, I was like, oh, I get it. He's more of a coach than a teacher. Like, his students actually call him coach, which I totally love because, hey, shouldn't all teachers be more like coaches, encouraging you, inspiring you, motivating you, and like actually believing in you? Well, today we get super sporty in our math therapy session. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this. So let's kick off this episode. See what I did there? Kick off, sports analogy, right? Okay, whatever. Let's get to my conversation with Johnny Cassels. All right, Johnny, welcome to Math Therapy.
Thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. I couldn't be more excited about being here, and I couldn't be more honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Oh my God, that's so nice. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Johnny Cassels owns Cassels Tutoring, which is probably the best tutoring company in Toronto aside from the Math Guru.
Fair assessment, right? Obviously.
Okay. What I love best about you, though, is that we're so similar in terms of the way we approach education, and which leads to many very long conversations.
Totally.
And the idea that education has so much more to do with mindset than it has to do with curriculum content.
Yes.
So that's definitely something I can't wait to pick your brain about.
Yep.
And I guess the first thing I'm going to start by asking you, because I think you had a really interesting way of putting it. You know, I don't believe in the term math person.
Yes.
But since we don't really believe in that, how would you define being a math person?
You know, that is like a really good question because it's one that we kind of get faced with almost every day, whether from parents or from students. I think that when you talk about a math person, what you're talking about is someone who's willing to engage the challenge of participating in a mathematics program, not necessarily someone who's good with numbers. You and I have talked about this on a multitude of occasions, that I think that math education needs to be a little bit more contextual and less content-based. Mm-hmm. And I think right then and there, when you talk about a math person, the social architecture would dictate that it's someone who's good with numbers, or who can do calculus, or who can do advanced functions, logarithms, you fill in the blank. But what I think it is I think a math person is someone who's willing to create the context in their mind to engage the challenge that mathematics presents.
I love it. I love it because A, that's a really cool definition, but B, that immediately takes away any notion of the fact that you're like born with some superpower, right? It's that idea of being open-minded and of just being open to the idea that like you can take on a challenge. So in your day-to-day, you deal with tons of parents and kids. And I mean, the idea of math therapy started because I noticed that there were so many people at every age that literally had like trauma associated with math. So whether it's an adult who like had a really bad math experience and now like shudders every time they hear numbers, or a kid that like is panicked before a math test or anytime they deal with math homework, there's this idea of like unpacking some sort of experience that has taught them that they are incapable of doing math, or as you would kind of say, incapable of being a math person. So incapable of even engaging in the challenge.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you about accountability, because that's a huge thing that you talk about and I love it so much. So why don't you tell me about just what that means to you and how you kind of use it?
So as you and I discussed, one of the things that really bothers me about buying into the idea that you're born with or born into a math skill or a math talent or born into being a math person is it totally absolves you of any accountability in defining your experience of math. The idea is that if you are a math person, it's something that you're born with, according to the contemporary sort of architecture. And then that means it's something outside yourself that determines your ability to participate.
Oh my God, I love this.
And there's no power for a student or a 25-year-old person who buys into that mentality. What I really like to do, and I sort of touched on it in sort of the previous response, was I think math can be a context that you create, that you participate within, as opposed to something that you're either born with or you're not. And what I like about the former definition, if you buy into math as a context that you create, you're immediately empowered in terms of your participation. You're not waiting on either a switch to click in your mind that's, okay, now I get math, I didn't before. Suddenly the onus falls on you to make the choice to put one foot in front of the other. And very often that decision has to be made courageously in the face of a lot of uncertainty. But nonetheless, you're the one who has the power to make that choice. And that's where accountability is kind of figures into my dialogue with a lot of parents and students.
Okay, so I love this because you and I are constantly talking about this, but I've totally noticed that a huge theme with like our students and parents is like the opposite of what you're saying, right? Like they will constantly, right? There's like so much blame, like blaming the teachers, blaming the curriculum, blaming the institution, blaming this, blaming that. Like parents blaming themselves, being like, oh, I was never good at math, so my kid is
so I hear that one a lot.
Yeah.
This genetic inheritance of math challenges, yes.
So do you find that you're seeing that as like a main cause of why students don't like excel in math?
You know, I'm really happy that you're engaging this dialogue because it's one that doesn't really come up a lot. And I think the reason why it doesn't is that it allows the people who perpetuate that dialogue, or maybe I'll call it a narrative, who perpetuate that narrative, it allows them to be victims of their circumstance. The idea is that when you're a victim, what's really nice is you're immediately polarizing the situation as right and wrong. And as the victim, you get to be right, and what's outside of you is wrong. And on some level, that's quite comforting. You know, my son, he's not good at math. I wasn't good at math. So suddenly, your son has nothing that he can do about it. He's a victim of his circumstance. And he's sort of unfairly placed in this curriculum that he has to participate in. As we just discussed, if that's the narrative we construct, our kids and our parents or our young adults, there's no moves they can make. You know, there's no bullets in the chamber, so to speak.
Right.
Because they're immediately, sort of pigeonholed with this complete and total lack of options. Now, you know, the one thing that I think is really important here is that the dialogue need not be polarized by right and wrong. If we're going to look to kind of change that social architecture, and I know I've used that expression a lot, surrounding the discussion of mathematics, if we start calling that wrong, you get people on their toes. Does that make sense? People start defending that position. And I think to sort of break that down is going to necessitate a tack that doesn't, again, polarize the dialogue. But it's one that I think is incredibly destructive to creating a sense of possibility for kids and their ability to participate.
So this reminds me of, I heard this Oprah podcast with Edith Eger.
Yep.
I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. Let's pretend it is. She's in her 90s now. She survived the Holocaust. And her story is crazy. Like, her story is fucking crazy. Like, the things she went through. Like, she was separated from her entire family. Like, there was a million situations in which she almost died and could have made the choice to become a victim of her circumstance.
Yes.
And anyways, the entire book is about this idea of using your circumstance to to kind of like challenge you, I guess. I mean, and that's actually, that seems like a really trivial way to put it, but her whole book is about choosing to be a victim or not.
Totally.
Like the idea that there are so many points in which you could choose to be a victim, or you could choose to take that victimhood and that circumstance to empower you and to strengthen you.
Totally.
So I feel like we both need to read it, because I've heard a bunch about it, and actually someone mentioned it to me this morning, and she was talking in the podcast about, you know, she'll talk to so many people who come to her for help, and they'll be like, well, you know, like something horrible has happened to them, and they'll be like, well, that's nothing obviously compared to you were in the Holocaust. And she's sort of like, look, like everyone has had shit happen to them, like
totally.
We have all been victims of circumstance, but what you do with that is what really matters. And I know this seems like crazy that I'm comparing this to like math education.
No, but I think it's a very worthwhile comparison. Along that vein, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, the notion that there's this space that exists between stimuli and your response to it.
Okay.
And you're accountable for that. And Frankl was, again,
yeah.
He was a survivor of, I think he was in Auschwitz. I could be wrong on that, or if it was, I think it was Auschwitz that he survived, and he wrote this book about his experience there. And the underlying message is sort of, as you just described, that regardless of the stimuli, there's this space presented to you, this gift of a space between the stimuli and your response, and you're completely and totally responsible for that space.
Oh my God, I love this. Okay, we'll put this in the show notes for sure, both of these books, and also I'm going to order them off of Amazon immediately.
They're really humbling reads.
Right.
In this, because as you said, it's easy, you know, like, oh man, I had such a shit day, you know, my hot chocolate at Starbucks didn't have whipped cream. And then you go home and read one of these books, and then you really know what it means to have a shitty day.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, I'm a candy ass. But I think what's so beautiful about those types of reading experiences is that, presented in the right context, teenagers, because I think young kids would be a little challenged to access that type of content.
Absolutely.
But you know, teens, you know, sort of, I guess, upperclassmen in high school who've maybe had the experience to face some shit, pardon the expression, it presents a wonderful opportunity to explore the idea that you're the author of your experience of life.
Well, and I love that. So that's another thing I love that you talk about is this idea of either being caught in some narrative that either you've created or that you've let someone create for you versus being the author of it. And I think it's interesting because, I started The Math Guru probably like 8 years ago. And I don't want to be like, oh my God, back in the day, blah, blah, blah. But I really do feel like now there's so much more of a lack of accountability. Like,
oh my
people,
God,
and especially just because the way the news is, right? So you're constantly hearing about how the curriculum's so horrible, and like, you know, our premier is making all these crazy cuts to education, and how could we possibly survive in such a situation? Like, how could we possibly do well in math? But the point is, there are people who do.
Yes.
Right? And I think the notion, what I hear a lot is parents being like, well, if you're that math person to start with, then you can do it. But if you're the type of student who needs X, Y, and Z, you can't. Right? But that kind of goes against what you're saying exactly, which is this idea where there is this space for you to do something.
Absolutely. And when it comes, I don't know if you've observed this with some of your students, but in a lot of my students, when they've come in for either an intake or a consultation, or even as we sort of move through the paces, establishing that relationship between tutor and student, very common, there's these sort of quote-unquote non-math people in the chair beside you who actually exhibit on a regular basis a fair bit of acuity when it comes to the discipline. And what you really begin to appreciate is that they've exhibited no willingness to engage the process.
Right.
It's sort of like me saying, Vanessa, I'm total dog shit at knitting. I've never tried to knit in my life. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
So is it really fair for me to say that I'm not good at something that I haven't really engaged with?
And I love that. I love that because I will often find, so for a lot of people, being good at something means you didn't have to try, and somehow it just happened. Like you were born just knowing how to graph a fucking parabola.
And it's, you know what, this is one of the things that I love to encounter with students is the idea of certainty. kids crave certainty when it comes to, I guess you could say, participating in something. And to just use a sports example, when I was a kid, I remember my dad got me into summer training. And in my head, the way I rationalized it was, if I do this training, I will make the team. And the funny thing was, is there was no guarantee I was going to make the team. And a lot of kids, and I'm sure you face this with a lot of your students, is they say, well, why would I bother participating for 6 weeks, taking notes, doing homework, coming to tutoring, and then have the test blow up in my face?
Right.
And this is where I really love to create this distinction between, and a lot of my students, if any of them do listen to this, they're going to be like, oh God, here we go. There's things that you want, and there's things that you fucking want. And wanting, as I sort of define the distinction, is just the idea of sitting in a chair and putting your hand up and say, pick me. And I think, as you and I both know, there's a lot of people who spend their whole lives sitting in that chair with their hand in the air. And life never really picks you. The circumstances never contort themselves to meet your unique needs in life. Fucking wanting it is the idea that you have the existential courage to stand up in the face of that uncertainty and take a chance at getting it. It's the idea of the door being held open for you versus you seeing a little crack in the door and pulling it open just for the chance to get through it. And
I love this. This applies to like every single fucking thing in life.
And and the thing is where I think a lot of confusion and anxiety gets created is kids sort of mix up what they want versus what they fucking want. And the thing is I want good grades, but I'm not getting them, but I want them. So what's the problem? What's the disconnect? Where's the issue? Why isn't this materializing for me? So I've been told that if I want it, I should get it.
Right.
And without that distinction, they sit there and sort of in this sort of the ether, in this flux of, this is what I want, this is what I'm not getting. And then you start to see the rationalization mechanisms that you've described. Well, I'm not a math person, that's why I'm not getting it. Or I have these extenuating circumstances that preclude me from getting it. It's almost as if people, and I think the education system has a space in this, have failed to acquaint kids with the idea that they're responsible for defining what constitutes, if we want to use a sports analogy, winning the game.
Right.
You don't have to get a 90 in math. My students, like I always say, I want you to just be fulfilled. And if the idea is if you're being told that you want a 90 in math, but you don't fucking want it, you're not going to get it. And then there exists this disconnect between what you want, and I put little quotey fingers there because I know we're on a podcast, what you want versus what reality has presented.
Right.
And they don't reconcile immediately, and that's where I think you and I see a lot of these rationalization mechanisms for justifying that the two don't dovetail with one another.
Oh my God, this is great. This is so good. Okay, so you're giving me a lot to think about, and now I'm actually, because I'm also like very particularly interested in how people develop this like math trauma, let's call it. So like, let's say we're taking this kid that you're describing who wants a 90 but doesn't fucking want a 90 and ends up sitting kind of around a 70, and in their mind they're trying, but they're not trying the way they would if they fucking wanted it.
Exactly.
And then they become like 30, and in their mind now they're 30 and they were never a math person in their mind, right? Because they never got the 90, and like they tried and they could never get past a 70.
Totally.
So you know, a lot of people have that experience where they were really humiliated in math class, or they just couldn't understand something.
Yep.
But there's a whole other range of people, these people who like were fine at math, but never scored really high grades, but because for some reason that was the standard imposed upon them, they still feel like they weren't math people, and they still have this whole trauma around it. But wait, is this making sense?
No, totally. Exactly.
I was going to say it doesn't add up, and I was like, that's too much. I can't throw that pun in there. But you know what I mean,
I know
right?
exactly what you're saying, and it's the idea that there was this expectation that doesn't reconcile with the experience.
Right.
And in that space between the expectation and the experience, you know, the human mind tries to make sense of it. And very often when we begin to rationalize as human beings, we rationalize from the perspective of trying to make ourselves right.
Right. So I think all of these students or adults now, and I do hear, because I've interviewed a lot of adults who are like, you know, I tried so hard and I couldn't get it. And then I'll be like, so tell me how you tried.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And they'll be like, well, I did my homework every night. And then, you know, and you're like, tell me about you doing your homework, right? So what you mean is you got the 10 assigned questions.
Yeah.
You went home, you did them. you got half of them wrong, and then you went and you wrote your test and you got a 70, and you were like, well, fuck, I did everything I could.
That's exactly it. And that's where I love when I engage a lot of students in this type of dialogue, where it's not necessarily content support, but actually the sort of mindset support, is if we use the, with a lot of boys, the idea of like sports and games, it kind of like, really sort of resonates with them. So there's the idea of what does it mean to win the game?
Right.
And once they create their definition of winning the game, then you can move on to the how.
Oh my God, I love that.
Right? It's the transition to the how. And that's with the how is where you can sometimes bring in outside assistance, right? Teachers, parents, tutors, someone like yourself or me, someone, maybe in a more of a mentorship role.
Right.
And that's where you can begin to ask those questions of the how. But so many kids, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but so many kids never define the what, so that they don't get to the space of the how and asking the how, right? So that anecdote you tell me, they have a preconceived notion of what defines the how. Mm-hmm. I just got to do my homework. And then when that doesn't work, oh, well, fuck, hands in the air. It's the world's conspired against me. You know what I mean?
And I also hear a lot, this is another thing I find, is people will kind of use this comparison, right? Well, like, Sally over there just did her homework and got 90, and I did my homework, got 60, end of the story. And actually, this is really funny, right? Because I find that people are very, very eager to claim that they need all sorts of additional help and resources, but they're not eager to then admit that they need to put in additional work, right? Like, it's like, okay, you're different than like Johnny over here. You're two different people. So maybe you need additional resources, but also you need to work harder for whatever reason, right? So it's like it's so easy to be like, well, I need all these other things from other people,
totally,
but not from myself.
And that's like a really beautiful point, because one of the things that I love to attack with students, in what world, and I don't know how we got born into this, but we did get born into it. Somehow there's been this narrative constructed socially that we're meant to go through this without problems. Mm-hmm. Problems, like if you have problems, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
In what world did that become the predominant narrative, whether it's mathematics or science, English, history, whatever, you fill in the blank, but let's focus on math here. When did that become the narrative that if you face problems, there's something wrong with you? As far as I'm concerned, education is about creating a sense of possibility that wasn't present before, very often through the exploration of yourself in the context of problems.
That's so well put.
But
why isn't that a thing at all?
Your guess is as good as mine. To be perfectly honest, I don't know.
Because that is not the thing, right? Especially you get from parents and students that like they are trying to eliminate any potential source of problem. Yeah. Right? It's supposed to be a smooth journey.
Yep. And exactly. It's just a drive eastbound on the 401, no ups and downs, just flat.
No rush hour traffic.
No rush hour traffic. Nothing. There's a ride to go where you order a Tim Hortons sandwich that has no meat and it's just 2 pieces of bread and you try to... No, I'm going too far.
Pretty far, yeah.
Yeah, no, but exactly. It's meant to be smooth sailing. And on some level, we've lost the appreciation for the problem. Mm-hmm. And when I say the problem, I don't mean a specific problem, but the idea of a problem and being confronted by it. I remember, you and I, we have a shared student that we had the pleasure of working with, and she was having difficulty in a course. And I remember you talking to her when I was there. And I remember you gave a really eloquently constructed, empowering talk to her where you said...
What did I say?
Well, you basically, I'm not going to do it justice, but you alluded to the idea that it's not about the content here. It's about showing yourself that you can do something. Mm-hmm. It's about proving to yourself that you have the capability to be taken out of your comfort zone and respond to adversity in like a very positive and meaningful way. And that's an experience.
That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, but that was it. And I was sitting there and I was like, yeah. This isn't about financial accounting or again, logarithms. This is about confronting problems.
Right. Well, and that is, I always think like that's what education should be about. Like the whole point of education is to get a young human ready to like exist in the world without these like walls.
Yep.
And I feel like we're doing an incredible disservice by removing every possible obstacle.
Totally. And that's what we're looking to do. And it's so funny. You said, you opened Math Brew 8 years ago and it seems different. I opened Cassels Tutoring just over 4 years ago, and it seems different.
Yeah.
Like, they're, as you said, we're trying to remove the problems, or we're trying to picture frame the problems. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think my own high school experience, like, you know, thank God my parents didn't have heart problems, because that first report card I got back in grade 7 would have sent them straight to the emergency room. It was terrible. I remember that we got my first set of exams I wrote in sort of middle school, I failed 4 out of 5. Was there a problem present? A biblical one. But it didn't, you know, yeah, it was a problem. But if you view the problem as just part of a process, it doesn't seem as anxiety-inducing.
Right.
It's something that's just meant to happen. Do you know, it's like, you know, with a newborn, there's always going to be like little sick, like, you know, the chicken pox. Like, it's not small. It's an iteration of smallpox. That can be quite panic-inducing for a parent. But the context of this is part of a process alleviates a lot of the anxiety that surrounds that. And I think with problems, when it comes to the educational infrastructure and the sort of story we tell our kids about education, I think it's super problematic when you try to convince them that problems are not meant to be part of the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple things. So you use sports analogies a lot, and
yes.
That's because you were a hockey player.
Yeah, you know, I had any other analogies were knocked out of my head. So, no, I'm kidding. Yeah.
But it's what I love about that, I think it's cool coming from someone who actually like played semi-professional sports.
Yeah.
But I find it so interesting because if you use a sports analogy with a kid,
yeah,
they like immediately get it, right? Like
totally.
When you're like, how many times did you fucking run and fall flat on your face before you scored a goal? And they're like 100. And you're like, why was that not an issue?
That's, you know, it's really funny because one of my favorite things to tell kids who are athletes, I'll ask them, why do you play soccer? Do you play soccer to be a pro soccer player?
And what do they say?
Usually the answer is no. That's not at the forefront of my mind. I do it because I love it.
Right.
It's fun. And then sometimes the rationalization I get from those same students, if they're having trouble in a subject like math, well, I don't want to be a mathematician, so why should I? I don't want to take math. And it's really interesting that you can rationalize it one way.
Yeah.
So my thing is what I use that for is I don't look to tell them that they're wrong. I look to demonstrate to them that there's a selective applicability to that rationalization mechanism.
So like, what happened?
Well, the idea is, you know, I wish I could tell you that they suddenly go from getting 60s to 90s, but my goal, again, is not to get them to 90s, is to get them in a place where they're content with their participation and fulfilled and aware of their role in creating their experience of math, right? And I think if you become cognizant of the reality that, okay, I'm making a choice not to participate, rather than, well, I don't want to be a mathematician, so why should I participate?
Yeah.
Notice how the second one has no power for you.
Right.
Or like when I say you, the student. The student has no power in the second one because on some level they've created a belief structure that math is designed to funnel people into mathematics degrees or math professions.
So what about, because I'll hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, I think about this later in life, what I always hear, like what the outcome of this thought process is.
Yes.
Right? With math, it'll either be, well, I didn't try because I couldn't do it. I didn't try because I didn't like it and it was boring.
Yep.
I didn't try because I couldn't see the relevance. Those are the three things.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? It's boring, or there's no point, or I can't do it.
Yeah, and even in the I can't do it, I'll throw in, like, I'm sure you've had that, I had a teacher who just sort of
course.
You know, sucked the love out of math.
Right.
You know, I was a great math student, and then one year,
Sure.
it all fell apart because of this one teacher. I just want to add that one in there.
Yeah,
because that's
100%.
a common,
Yeah. How do we help those kids when you get those excuses? I mean, I have like my response. I'm just wondering what yours is. Like, what do you say?
In that situation, as you know, and you touched on it at the beginning of the podcast, is that I'm an avid proponent of accountability, and you know, it's not about being hard on yourself, and it's not about being easy on yourself. It's about allowing someone who makes a claim like that to take ownership of that claim as their own. And what I mean by that is taking responsibility of creating that claim. Because that's what it really is. When you boil it down, it's a creation, it's a function of a narrative that they've established in their view to rationalize not being able to reconcile the expectation with the outcome. And if you can own that as your own, I don't think there's much of an issue there.
Yeah.
But why I think you see a lot of, in math anxiety is a thing, and it's not just reserved for high school students, as you talk to, it's people in their 20s and their 30s. I think the anxiety really boils down to, you might say something like that, but deep down inside yourself, you know that's not the case, and then that's where the anxiety happens. That's because there's an uncertainty that gets created into, well, why didn't the expectation become the reality? Right. And I think what my response is it's about a series of questions that allows them to discover their role in fabricating, and I use that word, fabricating that component of their story. Whether, as you said, it's I couldn't do it, or I got bored, or I had a bad teacher, whatever it may be, there was no absolute bad teacher. There was no absolute representation of boredom in the classroom. Now we're getting a little ontological, but you made a choice there.
Yeah, and now, actually, as we're talking about this, I'm deep into the self-help realm. I love all these books. I love everything Oprah. I love, You Are a Badass. But it really is, it comes down to, kind of the same thing over and over that, we're talking about math now. We're talking about math now because that's I find one of the most common manifestations of this.
Totally.
Of the idea of excuse.
Yes.
Right? The idea of excuses. Because, and actually, what I really find is most people don't actually believe they can do anything they set their mind to.
Yes.
But if you actually really dig down with most people and you say, this is why I like using math.
Yeah.
Because math is one of the manifestations of that. So this idea, if someone says to you, I can't do math, I'm not good at math, I'm not a math person, that is an absolute. You are in saying that statement, you are stating that there's something in the world that you think you're incapable of.
Yes.
But if you really say to someone, do you think that if you spent 10 hours a day doing math that you wouldn't be good at math?
Yep.
The answer is usually, well, no, I think I actually could. And that is the game changer, because then you're like, okay, well, I'm not even saying it needs to be 10 hours, but you're saying that this thing you've decided you could never do no matter what, there is a way you can do it.
Totally.
So now it's your choice, and you can choose not to do it, but it's possible for you to do it. So now you can't say you tried everything anymore. Right? Now you can't say that, no, I'm not a math person, or I'm not the type of person, or whatever. Now you've changed your entire life.
Oh, 100%. And it's sort of what we discussed. It's like me saying I'm shit at knitting.
Right.
I really haven't exhausted all possibilities.
Yeah, you haven't even picked up the knitting.
I haven't picked up the needles and the yarn, you know what I mean? I haven't done that. And what you see is when you're able to unpack it in the way you just described, again, you're not telling the person they're good at math, but you're showing them, you're allowing them to discover that they made a choice.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of how they authored that math experience.
Yeah.
And it's, again, as far as I'm concerned, it's not necessarily our role to try and tell people that they're good at math, but it's our role to get people accountable for their authorship of that experience of math. And I think there's a really, really meaningful distinction there.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, okay, well, as you know, we could talk forever. We've done it before.
Oh, absolutely.
Time to wrap it up. The 2 questions I ask everyone on the podcast.
Yes.
So the first one is, what would you say to someone who claims to not be a math person?
What we just sort of discussed, I would ask, what's the origin of that claim? And then I would ask them to unpack that claim and in a way that enables them to discover their role in creating the claim.
Love it.
And if you're the one who's created it, theoretically, you're the one who can destroy it.
Amazing. Okay. And what would you change about the way math is taught?
What's really interesting is I took physics in high school, and physics was something I actually understood pretty readily because it was so tangible and applicable to my world. If we studied inelastic collisions, I could understand that relative to 2 pool balls or billiard balls making contact with each other, or even 2 cars hitting each other. With math, it kind of floats in the ether. And I don't think enough effort is made, if we talk about pure content communication, there isn't enough effort, and I know how challenging it is for a classroom teacher. Let me be just for 30 seconds here. I get the opportunity to teach 1, 2, 3 students at once, maybe. Teaching 25 or 30 is
nightmare.
It's a nightmare. That is so hard. But to answer the question, is finding ways of making it more tangible. I found, for example, if I'm teaching transformations, getting a piece of yarn out and a piece of grid paper and just getting them to sort of kinesthetically move.
Do that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll use pieces of string.
So you have experience with knitting. You're using yarn. Right?
So you know, to be honest, my mom was a designer for Vogue Knitting. God rest her soul. So she used
really.
She was a super. She made, from when my older sister got married. She was the one who made the dresses for the bridesmaid and everything. But beautiful too. It was like unbelievable.
Wow.
So like yeah, she was an incredibly talented woman. So yeah, there's some yarn probably. I probably got the genetics to do it. Yeah, just to totally unravel everything we just talked about.
Oh, unravel! Wow, yeah. You're still going.
Still going. Okay. You know what I mean? Got the chops for it. No. But basically, I think that making it more kinesthetically accessible would, I think, just give students a better opportunity to sort of solidify their understanding.
Yeah.
If we're talking about pure content communication, if I had free reign, the first 2 weeks of a math course would be about discovering the context you've created for math before you even get into teaching the material.
Yeah.
So you get to establish what you want versus what you fucking want. And then that's where, once you have the what, you can get into the how.
I feel like this is a book. What you want versus what you fucking want. Did you make that up?
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, what it comes, well, I guess what the inspiration for that was, is there's this show called NHL 24/7, and the head coach of the Washington Capitals, they videotape an inter-period speech between the second and third period of the game, his team's down. And he has this quote that, you know, anyone who's a hockey player will, like, know this. He's like, you know what, guys? You can't just go out there and want it. You gotta fucking want it.
Oh my God.
And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, you gotta go out and fucking want it.
Oh my God.
So that was the springboard for that.
I think you're onto something, because all books with like fuck in the title are really in right now. I think you should get on top of this.
I think this is a trend I gotta jump on.
Yeah.
We could imagine that Twitter hashtag fucking want it. Anytime you do a tweet about like going to the gym in the morning,
is so good.
I just think it could go viral. I got a feeling on this one.
Oh my God.
And it's got to be fucking without the G.
Yeah, obviously.
Maybe an apostrophe. You know what I mean? Just to, like Guns N' Roses.
You can't put an apostrophe in
a tweet. Okay, so then we just got to go fucking want it.
Yeah, fucking want it.
And I think that'd be unreal.
Oh my God, I love it.
People eating Raisin Bran for breakfast instead of 4 eggs. Hashtag fucking want it. You know what I mean? Taking the stairs up 2 floors instead of the elevator. Hashtag fucking want it. Be comedic gold.
Okay, make us shirts. I'll start wrapping.
Oh, I would wear them. Man, I would wear those crop tops.
Oh my God, crop tops with fucking want it.
With fucking want it on it.
Oh my God.
You could buy like the pair acid wash pre-ripped jeans.
Yep.
And the ankle boots.
Okay, sign me up.
Oh man, it is 1983 all over again.
We have to stop this conversation. Okay. Okay, so final thing.
Yes.
Is I have to give you a prescription as your math therapist.
Absolutely. I'm ready.
I have 0 ideas. What do you want it to be? What should it be? Do you have any ideas? Make me a shirt, actually.
Yeah, just
make me a shirt. Make me a shirt that says fucking want it. Make me a piece of clothing
that says fucking want it on it.
I actually really love this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, make me something.
Okay, I can do that.
Make me something.
You've seen the way I dress, my sense of aesthetics.
Which is the way I would dress.
Yeah, so I think there's like a symmetry there.
Okay, make me something, and I want it to represent. I love what it represents, and I'm gonna wear it with pride and talk about it. Do it.
I love it. We're on it. Is it okay if it's like a crop top?
Can it be absolutely
unreal?
I love a good crop. Okay,
I'm in. I'm in.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, an absolute delight. It always is, and I can't thank you enough for having me on. I love the idea of the podcast and being able to just, as I said, you and I have had a lot of long conversations. Be able to do it and share them with other people is like extremely meaningful and something I'm so happy to be a part of.
Oh, I'm so excited for my new shirt. Okay, bye. Wow, this guy, am I right? Fucking want it. Seriously obsessed. And guys, you're gonna die. But JC did follow up with his prescription and made us the sickest crop tops. Head over to our website to check those out, themathguru.ca/maththerapy. I love the idea of defining what it means to win the game. I feel like we all need to do that in every aspect of our lives because, I find that everyone always wants more, we never think that we've made it. There's always this vibe of yeah, but if only blah, 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 whatever. I encourage you guys to look at your jobs, relationships, lives, whatever, and write down what it means to you to win the game in each of those categories. Frame it, save it, whatever, so the next time you feel like things aren't good enough, you can remind yourself of what your goals were, of what it means for you to win the game. Feel me? Just call me coach, guys. Jokes. Actually, please don't call me coach. That's weird. Okay, you can find the actual coach in this episode, aka JC, at Cassels Tutoring. And that's not like Castle, like the place where Meghan Markle lives, but it's like Cassels, like Cassels. Also, remember to follow us on all social media at The Math Guru for more math therapy. That's where we're going to post even more pictures of those sick crop tops and a ton of stuff to tide you over until next season. And of course, a reminder that Math Therapy is hosted by me, Vanessa Vicaria, produced by Sabina Wex, and edited by David Kochberg. And that song you've been hearing all season long, it's called Waves, and it's by my band, Goodnight Sunrise. Guys, I just want to say thank you one more time for giving our first season of Math Therapy a shot. It means so much to us. And once again, if you know someone who needs to hear this season, needs to get math therapy, or just needs to hear someone getting math therapy, please, please, please share this podcast and throw us a review on iTunes or the podcast app. Those things make such a big difference for us, and we just can't wait for bigger and better things in season 2. And now, this is all about you. This is your chance to tell us what you need math therapy for, what you want to hear about next season, whether you want to be a guest on the show or know someone who would be like the best guest for the show. Hit us up. You can do that on all social media or on our website, themathguru.ca/maththerapy. Find us, tell us what you want to hear. I'm determined to change the culture surrounding math. I know you are too, because it sucks right now and I really, really need your help. So please spread the word and let's get pumped for the next season. All right, that's all for this week. It's all for this season. So stay tuned for our next episode in our next season, which is coming out who knows when, but soon. I'll see you guys later.